10 curious facts about the sense of direction. Are we born or become disoriented? Why do women have difficulty with maps but quickly find their house keys? Can our internal compass be trained? Some people would be able to find their way home even if taken blindfolded to the other side of the world. Others manage to get lost even in their own neighborhood. What determines the sense of direction? Why do men seem to have it more than women? Are there people who are more oriented than others? 10 curious facts about our very personal natural GPS. Number 1. What does it depend on? Our ability to orient ourselves is based on the interaction between two main types of nerve cells. The first, the position neurons, which are called place cells, answer to the question, where am I? Their activity is directly linked to the position that the body occupies in space, and they are activated more frequently when we recognize that we are in a specific point. The latter answer the question, where am I going? And they are the so-called grid neurons. They form a sort of hexagon network together with the position cells. Each neuron controls a portion of it and discharges, that is to say, turns on, when we move in the corresponding space. The discovery of how our internal GPS works was rewarded with the Nobel Prize for Medicine and Physiology in 2014. Number 2. It is innate. The foundations of spatial orientation are already present in the first days of life, at least in rats, as 2 studies published in 2010 show. Even before rodents open their eyes and explore the outside of the burrow, the cells that control orientation of their heads already function as in adults. Which also means, basically, that I'm starting to think that there is no hope for me. Position and grid neurons develop and begin to interact within the first month of life. And it is their interaction that determines the more or less strong ability to orient oneself. Since the human hippocampus is not very different from that of rats, it can be hypothesized that something similar also applied to humans. Number 3. But part of it can be trained. Eleanor McGuire, neuroscientist at University College London, found that London taxi drivers have more grey matter in the posterior region of their hippocampus, which is responsible for navigation tasks compared to non-taxi drivers of the same age and cultural condition. This difference would become all the more marked the more years of service and would depend on the very tough training that cab drivers have to face. 3-4 years of wandering around the 25,000 streets of the city center on a scooter, subjected to tests that only 50% of candidates manages to pass. Number 4. It's really better in men. It's not a gender bias. Men actually do better at space tasks. On average, they are more skilled in imagining the rotation of 3-dimensional figures and relying on those images to find direction. And while women rely on a pre-established route to reach their destination, for instance, after the newsstand, turn left, then right until the traffic lights, and so on and so forth, men rather rely on their cardinal points, which are human cardinal points, north, east, west, south, which they identify more easily. A more flexible strategy because it is less dependent on the starting point. Number 5. Men are better except within their homes. Women score better on tasks that ask them to spot the difference. That is, they can more easily understand whether an object has been moved from its original position and where it has been placed. It's a classic of married life. She finds the house keys first. He's better at finding the way home. The difference is not yet entirely clear, but it could have evolutionary origins. In the past, women had the more permanent task of gatherers, and men had the more dynamic task of hunters. Number 6. It may be linked to sex hormones. A study by the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, NTNU, showed that women, after receiving small doses of testosterone under the tongue, are better at recognizing the shape of a virtual labyrinth and make greater use of their hippocampus to orient themselves. This brain region, generally more exploited by men during travel, it relies more on cardinal directions. Since loss of orientation is typical of Alzheimer's, twice as common among women, there may be some risk factor linked to sexual hormones. Number 7. It's a Finnish specialty. The populations of Northern Europe, in particular the Finns, followed by the Swedes, Norwegians, and Danes, they demonstrated a better sense of direction in a mobile game developed by University College London as a tool for early diagnosis of Alzheimer's. The test was conducted on 2.4 million volunteers from 193 different countries, all people healthy. Nordic populations could be advantaged by the genetic heritage of Viking seafarers, or by the fact that they spend more time outdoors. Go and figure. Number 8. It may be missing et al. Anyone who suffers from developmental topographical disorientation, DTD, knows this well. This is a rare disorder that literally leads to getting lost inside the house, and which makes it extremely difficult to memorize even the most frequently taken routes. Who is affected by this neurological condition, which affects 1 or 2% of the population, is literally unable to create coherent maps of the paths to take, perhaps due to a lack of synchrony between the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex, which is the region that should help us find the way, along, of course, with the hippocampus. Number 9. It's getting worse because of GPS. The habit of slavishly following instructions, and specifically the instructions of the navigator or Google Maps, makes us more inclined to ignore surrounding landmarks, leaving us with less detailed mental maps. The result? Without the guiding voice, we literally panic. Number 10. We can turn into human compasses. The company CyberNest has created NorthSense, which is a small silicone implant of 2.5 cm per side that is applied to the skin like a piercing and vibrates every time you align yourself with the Earth's magnetic North Pole. A sort of integrated compass similar to the one used by bats or pigeons to orient themselves.